Airbnb messed up their winter release and they're already going back on some of those changes. And that begs the question, the elephant in the room, is Airbnb's winter release partially responsible for the Airbnb bust? Are your calendars empty because of a software bug? Not because of some supply-demand issue, not because everything's falling apart and the economy is going to destroy us. Is it really just a bug? In this video, I've got a solid theory with a few points. Let me show you the winter release as it matters, and then why it could be the reason why your calendar's empty. Welcome back, YouTube world. This is a fun tinfoil hat conversation, but I think it needs to be had. For those of you who don't know me, I have 150 properties. I've been hosting for 7 years. I'm in 8 cities, and I see a lot. And I see listings that do well for good reason. I see listings that do well for no good reason. And I see listings that do bad for the same, okay? And we're seeing really haphazard trends in bookings lately. And it's an important thing to talk about here. Airbnb made a change, and it could be responsible for the reason why your calendar's empty or your friends. We do need to talk about the fact that Airbnb's winter release wasn't a bad idea. It was a good idea because they're a tech company, and tech companies need to innovate. It's part of the life cycle. They need to get ahead of VRBO, which is owned by Expedia. So they're competing with Expedia and VRBO. They need to compete with Booking.com, which also has Priceline, right? They're competing with some big players here. Now to do this, they've got to compete on two sides of the fence. They're loyal to two groups, hosts and guests. And if you remember COVID-19, 2020, they just gave all of our money away. Hosts, we just dumped money towards guests in violation of our house rules because Airbnb's like, oh no, if we don't give guests their money back during this pandemic, we're gonna lose all guests, they're never gonna travel with us ever again. So they dipped into our pockets, and they could have dipped into insurance or whatever, but that was a bad move. They lost a lot of hosts there. So then they spent a lot of time trying to get back in hosts' good graces with mixed results. And now guests are mad over, fees, like cleaning fees, stuff like that. So I do think that Airbnb's winter release is this gigantic rebranded release that's supposed to give olive branches to both sides in order to get people to come together like one big happy family again. But the thing is when you roll out a change that big, things will break, things will screw up. And they just reversed one of their changes already. And this is a sign that this could be very much true. The very first thing I want to talk about is the reversed feature. And then I want to talk about the 3 categories of changes that might be influencing your listing showing up or not in rank. Airbnb changed their instant book functionality. The instant book functionality used to have whether or not you could require a government ID, be verified, whether or not they have a profile photo, whether or not they have good past reviews. And then you can also have a pre-booking message. Airbnb moved the profile photo thing to the bottom of that same page where it's no longer attached to Instant Book. If a person doesn't have a profile photo, you can check that box and your listing just won't show up. Not Instant Book or not. If you have that checked, you're gonna get less people finding you, which could be okay. You might be fine with that. Second, they took away the pre-booking message, which everybody was upset about, me included. I was going to do a video on that. And then they've changed the government ID thing, saying that they require everybody to have a government ID now. Bravo. And then, of course, the past positive reviews thing. That became good track record. Now, we already found a bug in the good track record. I have hosts that are telling me that they're getting bookings from people who have 0 reviews, 0 past ones. So what that means is good track record doesn't mean only somebody who has positive reviews. It's just the absence of bad. Just not having a bankruptcy on your record is good enough to have a good track record in this case. So Airbnb kind of miffed that one. Hosts are angry, c'est la vie. But good track record wiped everything. So no pre-booking message otherwise. So they just reversed that. They're still sticking with good track record, but they put the pre-booking message back in, which we use as a deterrent from people who read it and go, oh, the host lives in the community or something. We don't want to mess with them. So that's why we've used it. I'm sure plenty of you use it, but for different reasons. And I've actually seen a couple different walks of life on this. It's actually really cool what some of you do with the pre-booking message. It's tight. So we can talk about it in the comments here, or my free Facebook group, the host of Airbnb Automated, 50,000 smart hosts. We can talk about it there too. The first thing that could be causing a bug is the new review update. I actually think their review update is awesome. I'm going to do a separate video just on that, okay? Stay tuned. That review update could lead to a change of philosophy, which could also then lead to a change of algorithm. Airbnb said you can go back and just remove any review if they violated your house rules, they overstayed, they broke stuff, not just if they threw a party. Knowing that there's a lot of retaliatory reviews back there that won't get removed, Airbnb may also be believing that their past review data is flawed. Now, if they believe that their algorithm is working on flawed data, they might start to cut that data out of the algorithm or give it a lower weight in its whole algorithmic equation, which means if you've always had tons of great reviews, you've always been fed well. But what could happen here is, let's say you've had a bunch of great reviews and you've had a couple recent mediocre ones. Well, if Airbnb is cutting out the value of previous reviews and operating more on a recency bias, then we could be seeing that your SEO or your rank is getting diminished greatly over just a couple of reviews because they're just ignoring your past ones. This could actually be the case, but that's just one. And there's a few reasons why the Airbnb algorithm could be breaking. There are some notable updates that go along with all of this too, that I think we just need to honorably mention here. They've increased the number of categories, like their niche categories, which really speaks to Airbnb's strategy. And they've upped their air cover to like $3 million, which means I think they're trying to push more interesting and expensive listings, stuff that's hard to cover. In doing so, hoping to get more people window shopping on the Airbnb platform, which really does argue that they're still largely an interest algorithm. They want people to window shop. They want people to look at castles and teepees and tree houses. So that way, eventually, when somebody does finally travel, whether or not they're going to a castle, because most people can't afford that, but when somebody finally does travel, they're so used to playing with the Airbnb platform that they'll book there instead of VRBO. I really think that's what they're trying to do. So they're trying to continue to push interest while also trying to balance the value side of this. And that is really difficult. Their algorithm is trying to make sense of something. And I saw a private document that my representative, my success rep, gave to me that showed what I'm calling a TAPR score. It's TAPR, Total Amenities Prioritization Rank. Airbnb did say that they're trying to push more value to be a cheaper alternative to hotels again. It's a thing. Now, this amenities prioritization score, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to dial in listings at certain price points should have a certain number of amenities or key amenities, provide a certain level of value, and we're going to be good with that. Of course, a listing that's $15,000 a night, another thing that you guys might not know, there used to be like $9,999 limit on the nightly rate. Now you can have a $35,000 nightly rate. They've changed that. So they're allowing you to charge whatever you want. So these listings that are $16,000, $20,000 a night, it's really hard to quantify what kind of score that needs to be listed. Because it's so unique, it's gonna pop up in categories, not in some aggregate search with 2,000 listings or 4,000 listings, right? So they're trying to balance both of these out. They're really trying to be loyal to their unique stays because that window shopping, that rare $140,000 booking that they want to get for a castle, they want those because they're collecting their 14% either way, guys. They're pulling larger sample sizes now. They're pulling 1,000 listings at a time instead of 300. This TAPR score is an indicator that they're trying to change the way their algorithm surfaces listings. And if you saw my previous listing on their algorithm change, they're also trying to pull more satisfaction metrics. Like if you search for a monthly stay and you click on a listing, it's going to show you listings that had monthly stays. And it will tell you in the review of a previous guest that they were a monthly stay. They'll show you that stuff to give you more confidence when booking a monthly stay yourself. So Airbnb is really trying to change the way that they match hosts up. So this is the part that we can't see behind the scenes, right? We can't see enough about this to know, but my logic here is if they change a dozen major things on their platform and they expect to deploy those things in rapid succession, things break. They've had bugs before. I've had a time where they didn't pay me out for weeks. They had to give me a $50,000 payout back when I was way smaller too, guys, but way smaller. I didn't even have 100 properties back then. So they paid me $50,000 payout once after not paying me for a few weeks. They actually have about $10,000 or more of overdue payments that they forgot to pay me now. And they probably have payments that you're owed too. And this is something I think you should tell all of your host friends. Tell them exactly this. Go to your transaction history right now on your computer and then go to upcoming payouts. If you've been hosting since 2020, 2021, you might see in your upcoming future to come payouts a past dated event, right? You might see a 2020 reservation that's still in your upcoming payouts. It should be in your completed payouts. That means that they never paid you for it. You need to make a list of those and say, Airbnb, pay me the money you owe me. And we have to do this every now and then. And like I said, we're overdue a little over $10,000. This is another bug. These are bugs. Airbnb is a software. Softwares have bugs. It's really hard to manage that big of a software base already and try to manage the level of complexity that they're trying to engage the world with, right? They're trying to create completely different search scenarios for different types of consumers. People who are window shopping for cool stuff, people who are shopping for value, and they've just released a big update. So for this alone, I think is another solid second reason why we could be seeing a bug where people are just getting chopped out of search. Not just the whole seniority thing, just oops, they like accidentally, we forgot your listing exists and you get tossed out. I think this could actually happen. And third is pricing. Pricing itself is actually a complex thing. There's a couple things within the pricing conversation that could be getting your listing just thrown out of search. Brian Chesky made a promise. He said, I'm gonna give hosts powerful tools to do their pricing. Well, the one that he did is kind of futile. If any of you guys watch my pricing strategy videos, you'll know about rule sets. You'll know about pro tools. You'll know about the multi-calendar, right? If you don't, welcome to my videos. In order to have rule sets, you have to have Pro Tools. And a side effect of having Pro Tools is when you click on the calendar button, it takes you to the multi-calendar. It's all one big enchilada. Now, what he did is he made it possible for you to use rule sets, not from the multi-calendar, but from the individual calendar view. So if you're on the calendar of one listing and you go click on some dates, it'll show rule sets. But if you don't have Pro Tools activated, you still don't get that feature, which is why it's futile. I was speaking at a seminar and I was talking to maybe 200 hosts. all people with Airbnb properties, I said, who here knows what the multi-calendar is? And I did a show of hands. 10% of you hosts know what a multi-calendar is, which means less than 10% of you know what rule sets are. So Airbnb activated a new widget for people who don't even know it's there, is my point. And I really do think that you should know how to use rule sets, because it's one of the main things that I use to run my pricing strategy every day for over 150 properties. Yes, we use Wheelhouse for pricing automation. I really recommend them. But beyond the regular pricing automation, there's so many things that you should change when your listing goes up or down in price. And that's a long story, but I have a free playlist on pricing strategy. I also coach every Saturday for like 4 hours. I spent an hour last week talking about rule sets with my team, or my students, my team of students, however we want to talk about it. So how will this affect the algorithm? That, and Airbnb has something called upfront pricing now. Upfront pricing is where not only does the daily rate of your listing get factored into a search, but they take in your cleaning fee, management fees, and they load it all in. So if somebody's searching for a stay and they search for 3 nights, instead of just using your nightly rate to show whether or not you should populate, they're putting your fees in there. And they're loading an average nightly rate or a total price that weighs in all your fees. Now, this is going to influence people in a big way because there's a price toggle thing, the slider that goes up and down on Airbnb's filter. Now, if you filter out the top, it'll start chopping off the most expensive listings, and it will do that if your cleaning fee is too high, because now your total price is too high. So having too expensive of a cleaning fee is actually gonna get you punished now, where people used to skate through on this. So sure, you could, for good reason, be falling out of search and your calendar's empty because you have a stupid cleaning fee, or your nightly rate's too high and you're just not changing your prices. This could be true, but Airbnb could have an error in how it's loading everybody's prices. Could happen. And because it's misloading, mistotaling your stuff, it could be throwing you out of searches by accident. The reason why I think this is possible is because every now and then I'll see Airbnb load some completely erroneous monthly rate for a listing. It's really hard for me to find an example because it is rare, but I've seen just totals not populate the right way, or the percentage discounts that they use on rule sets or last minute discounts just don't actually add up. It's usually not terribly far off on the discount side, but it still shows us an imperfection in their math sometimes. So this could be something that's true. And I really would like your guys' feedback on this if you're experiencing anything of the like here. There's something important that you need to understand too about this update, which is that in the winter release, they now have moved where the house rules show up. It's at the very footer of a listing, front page. Now they're doing this for a good reason. They are so focused on guest satisfaction and making sure that guests are happy with their stay, no negative surprises, that they're trying to prevent people from having checkout rules, pre-checkout lists, chore lists that are bad for the guest. Here's how I think it's gonna go based on my experience. I've had apartment complexes that want us to do criminal background screenings on our guests. And the way Airbnb requires this is done is in the house rules, you list all the things that are required in your background check and state that it's gotta happen before arrival. And if you do this, a guest can still cancel their stay, but get a full refund, even though your cancellation might be strict. And you don't get a penalty as long as you're forthcoming. But if you're not forthcoming and you require a background check and don't say so in your house rules before the guest books, if they find out and they're upset, they'll cancel, guest gets the full refund and you get penalized. They could even possibly remove your listing if it's an egregious thing that you keep doing wrong. So I think what Airbnb is going to do is if you don't show that you have pre-checkout instructions, like take out the trash, whatever, and you want things done, and you're not forthcoming, a guest could cancel and then you get fined. Or a guest could actually have a grievance against you after their stay is over the last day, and the guest might get a partial refund because you've asked them to do something that you weren't forthcoming about before they booked. So I think Airbnb is going to take the same kind of approach as they did with reviews to prevent bad guest experience. And a bonus for you guys, those of you who stuck around, the niche categories include accessibility. I want you to know this and want you to do something about it. Yes, there's castles, there's teepees, there's tree houses. Accessibility is probably one of the most underserviced segments of Airbnb. People who are disabled to travel use Airbnb all the time. Now, the accessibility Airbnb rep told me prior to COVID-19 that there was a 400% increased ratio of accessibility searches when compared to the listings available for accessibility back then. That means that you could get 4 times the views and even more the bookings. That'd be insane. So in order to get extra accessibility search, there's going to be an accessibility features section on Airbnb, completely filled out as much as you can. And then also know how Airbnb does their categories. They will crawl through your description, they'll crawl through your photos, captions, and title, and they'll look for where to categorize you. If you're a treehouse, if you're a high rise on a high floor, that's top of the world, things like that. You can start adding in language that lets Airbnb know that you belong in some categories, and accessibility is one of those categories. Use the word disabled and never handicapped. Okay, it's like one of the only rules, that requests that she had for us back then. So stick with that. If you have any other questions about how to be awesome on Airbnb or in your short-term rental space, put them in the comments. I make videos all the time. Welcome to the channel if you're new here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side.